Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bow Sorcerer PvP build guide. In this video I want to talk about one of the most fun, unique and one of my most favorite PvP builds of all time, Bow Sorc. Sorc is one of my top 3 classes in the game in both PvE and PvP. I was playing two-hander Stump Sorc years ago, I've tried dual-wield Stump Sorc. This year I of course hopped on Max Sorc meta train as well and tried that, but my most favorite way to play Sorc in PvP was and still is Bow Sorc. It was my first PvP video on this channel and my first build guide as well. So on top of the fact that I really like this build, it is also very special for me in terms of my PvP content on this channel. Like I was already saying in my other video, it's hard to say what my main is, considering I play a lot of classes, but I'd say Bow Sorc is easily in category of my most beloved and played builds, so I can say it is one of my mains as well. I haven't tried all possible setups you can run on it, but I've tried enough and played my fair share amount of hours on this build. I think I know it pretty well and I definitely feel confident and strong on it. So let's talk about Bow Sorc. I will start with sets, skills and give my build overview in the end of the video. Detailed build, as always, will be in the description. I'm playing Bow Sorc since 2022 and tried a bunch of different stuff on it. First it was Savage Werewolf before it was nerfed. Super OP set, but unfortunately not anymore for a couple years now, so rip that. Then it was Way of Fire for me. I was playing it for the longest time and I was showcasing it in my previous Bow Sorc build on this channel, so you can check it there. And right now, my main damage set on this build is Relequen. Not surprisingly, because as far as I know, it is considered the best set for Bow Sorc and probably it's only used by Bow Sorcs. I actually was trying Relequen a little bit after Savage Werewolf and before Way of Fire, but I've decided to play with Way of Fire instead of Relequen. Way of Fire worked super good for me and I enjoyed that build for 2 years. But recently I've decided to come back to Relequen and I'm not regretting it. To compare it to Way of Fire, let's say Way of Fire does 3k plus fire damage every 2 seconds, and Relequen does twice as much damage every 0.7 seconds. It says 1 second, but I think it's actually every 0.7 seconds. Even if I'm wrong here and it's every 1 second, it's still twice as much damage as Way of Fire, so it's insanely OP. Yes, you need to maintain light attacks on a target and you need to build stacks, but if you do it, Relequen is the best damage set on Bow Sorc that you can use. Max stacks for Relequen is 10, where it does twice as much damage than Way of Fire, or even more than that, but even on 5 stacks it already does same damage as Way of Fire. If I'm not mistaken, Relequen cannot crit and Way of Fire can, but even with that Relequen does more damage because of how often it procs. Definitely the best damage set for Bow Sorc with insane pressure. If you can keep the stacks, which is pretty easy to do on Bow Sorc. Also the fact that it is medium armor and not heavy like Way of Fire only adds more damage from passives. If you don't want to use Relequen, I can suggest using Way of Fire because it is still a very good set and will proc consistently just from poison injection and doesn't require consistent light attacking like Relequen. Like I said, I was playing with Way of Fire for years and I can confirm it's a very good set. Other interesting option would be Tarnished Nightmare. I guess it does similar damage to Way of Fire, and although it procs on crit damage, you will still proc it pretty consistently, especially on Bow Sorc, where you have very respectable amount of crit chance. So I don't think you'll get any problems here. Other good options would be sets with a lot of penetration, such as Shattered Fate, or maybe even Twice Fanged Serpent, which has less penetration but has other useful stats instead. However, I have a feeling like those sets are usually paired with something like Relequen and Way of Fire and not used instead of them. My other set on this build is Rallying Cry. Gives us offense and defense, best PvP set in the game in my opinion, which I use on basically all of my builds, so nothing more to say here, just can't go wrong with this set. Like I said, it can be replaced by other damage sets, like Shattered Fate for example, but then you might have some struggles with surviving, because we don't really have a burst heal on Sorc, and we need that tankiness from Rallying Cry. Then we also have 1-piece Magma for sustain. You can use another monster piece here if you want. Then I also have Markyn Ring of Majesty, which I was also talking about a lot. It gives us damage and armor. A very good mythic, once again, can't go wrong with that. Other good mythics could be Thracian Stranglers, for Cyrodiil if you bothered to build stacks and lose them when you die. Bilharzar's Band is a nice mythic, it used mostly for increased damage of your light attacks. I haven't tried it myself, but heard people saying it's good. Deathdealer's Feet isn't really needed at all in my opinion on this build, because we already have a lot of resources and sustain, but you can use it instead of Markyn if you don't have it for example. New mythic, the Saint and the Seducer, which will come out in June, might be very good too. Gaze of Cities, in theory, can be nice as well, but it's more for tankiness. Finally, I came back to using Master's Bow, which is super strong, gives a lot of damage and greatly benefits this build, because in my opinion using Master's Bow plus 1 piece Magma is better than using Monster Set plus 1 piece Trini. You can of course argue with that, but I'm trying Master's Bow now and I like it a lot. Speaking about setups without arena weapon, like I said, instead of it you can use full Monster Set and 1 piece Trini. The problem with it is that we don't really have good monster sets for Bow Sorc. Set I was using for the longest time is Engine Guardian, but it's for sustain and tankiness. It gives 0 damage. If we use it instead of Master's Bow, we lose basically 400 damage. Other option could be Bow Sorc. It is a good and strong monster set, but it's not as consistent as Master's Bow, which is active at all times. And also on Bow Sorc, I feel like ultimate isn't the most important part at all, and considering we proc Bow Sorc after using ultimate, I don't know. Kjallner is an interesting option, but same as with Bow Sorc, I'd rather take arena weapon. And now, probably the most interesting option, Chuden. With that set we can drop Hurricane for LSS, which will provide Major Breach, and use Ice Staff on backbar. So that will give us consistent damage from extra penetration and a couple of status effects from LSS. That I think is interesting to try out. Although keep in mind that way you will lose extra 15% speed from Hurricane and also a dot from it. I don't know if we need it that much, but still. So overall I think combination of 1 piece sustain or penetration plus Master's Bow is the best option currently. I think that's all for the sets, so now let's go to the skills. As in my previous Bow Sorc video, all skills are the same. I was already explaining them in detail in that video, so here I'll go through them quickly. First, frontbar. Here we have Dark Deal for sustain and 2 cool buffs, Minor Force and Minor Berserk. Timer on them is a little bit low, but it's honest work. Bound Ornaments gives us extra 8% stamina, and it's also super visually pleasing and a nice damage skill, which adds to our overall pressure. Crystal Weapon is our bread and butter on this build. It hits really hard, reduces enemies' armor by 1k, can be pre-buffed before you hit other skill, and it also heals us when we damage the enemy due to passives. Camo Hunter for crit buff and Fighters Guild passives. Streak is our stun, mobility skill, and it also does damage as well. As our frontbar ultimate, you can honestly use whatever one you want. I don't think it matters that much. You can use Atronach, Negate, Shooting Star, Dawnbreaker, Toxic Barrage, Overload, whatever you want. Then we go to the backbar. Here we have Poison Injection to proc Master's Bow and as our strong dot as well. Haunting Curse, which is a super strong dot. Vigor is our heal and minor resolve buff. Crit Surge is our strong heal over time and damage buff. Hurricane is our major resolve skill, which also gives us minor expedition and damage over time. And finally, our backbar ultimate is Temporal Guard for 5% damage mitigation and as an escape button when we need it. Now let's talk about the build in general. For me personally, Bow Sorc is the way to play Sorc. It's hands down my favorite Sorc build. It is strong, has good damage, OP pressure, insane ability, not the best healing but strong heals over time and quickness, which keeps us alive. It is quite unique build, which you don't see many people are playing, and it has various and engaging playstyle in my opinion, where you have a bunch of different damage skills and maneuvers you can implement in your combat. Overall, Bow Sorc is one of the most fun and cool builds I've ever played in PvP, and I love it a lot. So be sure to give it a try out different sets, skills, playstyles, and have fun. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.